My name is Yuki Nishimura, and I am a volunteer with the PR marketing team of the Northern California Cherry Blossom Festival. I was also honored to be the 2019 Northern California Cherry Blossom Festival Queen. I grew up in Sendai, which is the capital city of northern Japan's Miyagi Prefecture. One of my earliest childhood memory involves what Sendai is perhaps most known for, which is the Tanabata Matsuri. I remember as a kid going through inside my stroller and seeing these bright, beautiful bamboo ornaments with colorful streamers coming down from it. Every time I tried to pull it down, my mother would tell me, "Don't do that, Yuki." When my family heard what happened on March 11th, 2011, we were devastated. And each of us tried to find ways to help our own community. It's been 10 years since that time, and through the Northern California Cherry Blossom Festival, I had the great honor of interviewing many people from our own community and from Japan, and to hear their stories. Today, we would like to share some of those interviews with you.
The earthquake warning signal went off on TV, and after 30 seconds or so, a huge earthquake hit my area in Tokyo. It was so hard to describe. It was certainly the biggest shake I've ever felt in my life. Immediately after the quake, which lasted about 2 minutes or so, it was a very long quake. I tried to contact my family back in Iwaki, but the cell phone service just completely was disrupted and didn't work at all. I was watching live coverage on TV, and I saw a helicopter shot of tsunami hitting the coastal Miyagi, and it was very much a horrific scene. My family members and relatives back in Iwaki, Fukushima all survived, fortunately. I was able to talk to my mother in the evening of that day over Skype. It was. But the house I grew up at was completely damaged by the quake. It took almost 2 years to repair the house.
My youngest son wasn't really aware of what was going on, but he just kind of clung to me. And we went outside. It was snowing. And I started walking to the bus stop. I basically picked up my youngest son and held my oldest son's hand, and I told them we had to walk home.
4月の6日から炊き出しをやってくださいっていう風になって、社員方々に避難してましたけれども、電話で連絡を取って、で、ある程度の人員が集まって、よし、明日からやろうよっていう状況になった時に、一旦福島県のいわき市の方に集まったんですよね。で、道路を車でこう走っていくわけですけど、右側はもう海沿いで、もう壊滅的な状態なんですね。だけど走ってる道路の左側は家がちゃんとしているっていうような、もう本当に神様が線引きしたんじゃないかと思うような光景を見ました。
2010年の秋から杜氏になりました。ですので、酒造りは2010年の秋から2011年の春、冬の間に毎年、酒造りを行いますので、私が杜氏になって最初の年でもあったんですね。で、もうすぐ酒造りが終わる時、3月11日、同時にですね、2011年というのは、新田本家が創業300年を迎えるとても、意義のある、おめでたい年でもありまして、そんな時に、1000年に一度と言われるこの大震災が起きて、福島は残念ながら翌日に、原子力発電所が爆発をして、とても驚いた、とても、悲しい思いをした記憶があります。
One of the things that I think it's been really amazing with the San Francisco Bay Area community, and and in particular with the Japantown areas that we have here, the communities, is there is the sense of wanting to help when there's a crisis. And so here, when there were fundraising drives and efforts here in the community to try and raise money for people who are really suffering in Japan, it was inspiring. It was really inspiring to see people coming together.
Hours of the earthquake hitting, JCCC&C, or the center as we call it, began to get inundated with people who wanted to help in any ways. And this was not a new lesson for us because JCCC&C had been very active during the 1995 Great Hanshin earthquake. The center helped raise nearly $4 million to go to the people of the Tohoku area, something of which we're very proud and also so thankful. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of people who sent in donations, small and corporations and companies who sent much larger ones. And we couldn't have made the impact in Tohoku that we did without all those generous donors. In the case of Tohoku, what we saw was the generosity of so many people in this country, but also what we saw is an opportunity to connect to Japan. So whether it was a reconnection for Japanese Americans in this country to connect to their roots in Japan, or whether it was just a chance to get to know more about the country from which our ancestors came from, it was a wonderful way to move forward and to try to make that connection, Kizuna, as you might put it.
In the case of Tohoku, it was so devastating, right? It was a lot of times it was as a matter of survival. And so the community I know came together, as well as volunteers from everywhere. And so I know a lot of Americans went over there and a lot of Europeans went over there just to help them dig out and get to some kind of normal way of life. And so that's one situation. Here locally, because of the pandemic, the San Jose Japantown community it's a very close-knit community to start with. But as an organization, we've all kind of reached out to help each other.
ことっていうか、私桜祭りのみこしのメンバーなんですけど、2011年もそうでしたし、2012年も北カリフォルニア桜祭りとして、もうどれだけ本当に来られてるお客さんも、私たちいろんな団体もフードブースを出してる人たちも、もう本当にすごいサポートしてたなっていうふうには思います。
But I do remember how impressed with how quickly our community organized, specifically the community center, the JCCC&C, really pulling together, getting connections made. I was so happy to see our Japanese American community giving so generously and just wanting to find different ways to try to support. So it happened pretty quickly, which was really nice.
Nakayoshi Young Professionals is a group for people in their 20s, 30s, 40s who are looking for a sense of community to come together and both enjoy social events, but also volunteer events together. So when I brought up this need in Fukushima by the children's home, immediately the core members were like, we want to do something to help. And so we put together an ad hoc group called Friends of Fukushima. And for 5 years, we did a yearly Noodles for Nippon fundraiser where we sold all you can eat udon bowl tickets. And lots of community members came through to not only eat with us, but also just, donate even more than the ticket price so willingly, because they heard about this story. They heard about children in need in Fukushima, and they were very, very willing to help.
足掛け6年石巻を中心に行ってまして、で、10回行ってます。 でそのうち最長が1ヶ月、ボランティアのメンバーとしてそこにおりましたので、いろんな被災された方々に寄り添う活動もしていましたし、でお母ちゃん被災、仮設住宅にお住まいのお母ちゃんたちが作られたいろんなものをこちらに持って帰ってきて、販売をしたりとか、そういうこともしてましたね。
We planned that trip and ended up being Kiyomi, who was a friend of mine at the time, and then my two good friends, Joe and Masa, Joe Kopshever and Masa Zhao. And Masa's sister came, Asa, and Joe's cousin Teresa as well. So it was the six of us representing Nakayoshi young professionals and just trying to bring some hope to Megumi, Japan in Ishinowaki.
Other things, so, and depending on kind of what the day held, we were divided in groups. I remember I was lucky enough to spend some times with some older ladies in the community. They got together to do an arts and crafts event. It was basically their socialization and their way to kind of uplift their spirits. But they would create different crafts that they would be able to sell to outside communities to try to raise money for their community.
とね、その後ね、1ヶ月以上いました、実家の、手伝うために。もう、まあ実家の片付けられる範囲での片付けというのと、あと、まあお寺なんで、やっぱり津波で亡くなった方もたくさんいたし、まあ結局お寺も大変だったんだけど、まあそうやって亡くなった方もたくさんいて、僧侶としての務めもしなきゃいけないということで、まあ住職である父を、お手伝いするためにずっとしばらく1ヶ月以上いました。で、まあ、電気は一切切れたままだったので、毎日みんなでろうそくで明かりを灯して、ご飯を食べたりしてましたね。
Earthquake and the tsunami and the nuclear disaster happened, we began to see this outpouring of support from all members of the community, both Japanese American and non-Japanese American. I have a friend in the Los Angeles area, Deborah Nakatomi, who has seen the same thing in Little Tokyo. And we were really surprised and so affected by how many people wanted to help. And so the two of us looked at each other and said, you know, someone should do a documentary about this. And Paul Osaki, who is the executive director of JCCCNC, looked at us and said, yeah, why don't you do it? That got us thinking a little bit, you know. The genesis of it was, of stories from Tohoku, really was to capture the Japanese American support for Japan at the time. But you know, things changed when we went to Tohoku and started filming. We realized that although here in the Bay Area, the center had raised nearly $4 million, which we thought was a huge sum of money, when you looked at the need in Tohoku, it was just a drop in the bucket. And so we changed the structure of the documentary a little bit. It no longer became Japanese Americans helping Tohoku, but it became stories about Tohoku and sort of the parallelisms and the lessons that Japanese Americans learned and the ability to reconnect with their Japanese roots.
その前にね、私事でね、いろいろ、ね、北カリフォルニアの皆さんというかサンフランシスコ総工事の関係の皆さん、あとはね、ロサンゼルス、同じ曹洞州でいうとロサンゼルスの皆さんにもね、本当にいろんなご支援をいただいてたんです。それにちゃんとありがとうって言えてなかったのが少しちょっと私も心残りだったので、本当にもし、この場を借りて皆さんに伝えられるのであれば、本当に皆さんいろいろご支援いただいて、ありがとうございました。なんとか私は同じ宮城県内の南三陸町ではないんですけども、名取市というところで元気にやってます。
after seeing everything that had happened, families that were divided, children that were lost, lovers being separated, and never being able to see each other again, I think it really made us realize how special it is to really cherish the ones that you love in your life, and didn't think that it didn't make any sense to wait longer and longer. We knew that it was right. So we basically after the trip, we went down south towards Tokyo, and in front of Matsumoto-jo, I asked Kiyomi to be my girlfriend. And yeah, so that is when we started to date, was October 11th, 2012.
So on March 11th of 2018, we actually...
That's the anniversary of the Tohoku Earthquake.
Which is the anniversary of the tsunami and earthquake. I gave birth to our baby girl, Himari, which we decided on that name because it's short for Himawari, sunflower, because of our experience in Tohoku, picking the sunflowers, with the idea of not only being, a bright, beautiful flower, but also a sign of hope. And so, Hima-chan is certainly that to us. And it's even more special that, she did arrive to us on a day that is important for us to remember forever.
So our team actually, maybe 20 members from Tohoku school. So, not 100 all members, but some of us are currently working on the project for new disaster prevention training in schools. It's called Hinan Kunren or Bosai Kunren in Japanese. This program, disaster prevention program, was generated by people who actually have experienced the disaster in Tohoku. So this is why it is very important, and this is why it's very useful for future, prospective disasters. Many scientists expect huge earthquake will occur in 30 years or something like that.
やっぱり助け合うとか、日本では困った時はお互い様なんていう言葉もありますけれども、人と人の心がつながって、共感を生んだり、でそこから何か新しいことが始まっていく。でそれがどんどん進んでいくっていうのもですね、絆って言えるんじゃないかなっていうふうに思うんですね。
でも切れない縁、そんな意味だと思うんですけど、例えば僕は新田本家の18代目の蔵元で、僕の前に17人の蔵元がいて300年、ずっと続けてきた、それは一つの絆であって、つないでいくためにやはりいいものを、次の代に残す、そんな、福島県内の農家さんとの絆も、これは本当に震災のおかげで、生まれたものもありますので、震災が悪いことばかりでもないなと。やっぱり人の人生っていろんな宿命、運命を背負って生きていく中で、やっぱり起きたことに対して、次どうしようかと、そこにやっぱり自分の力だけでは越せないハードルも、それまで培ってきた、絆の、人たち、そういう人たちの応援であったり、もしくは自分たちがこれから作っていく絆が僕たちの子供、次の代の人たちに、絆としてそれを、子供たちを応援してくれたり。
Pride was brought about by competition and cooperation. Kizuna is the strongest and most beautiful form of cooperation. Kizuna is about facing reality and sharing difficulties. Kizuna is to be positive thinking. Kizuna is to share the joy together.
さらになんですけれども、お互いの本当に自分だけじゃなくて相手のことっていうのをきちんと、考えられるっていうのが絆であって、で我々がお互い自分のことと同じように相手のことも考えられるっていうのが絆の姿なんだろうと思う。
Kizuna to me means the things that bind you together, the ties that bind you. And I think we see that both within our family, within our extended family. But one thing I've been so proud about in growing up and living in San Francisco and in the greater Bay Area is this bind that the Japanese American community particularly has with each other. You know, you may move away from Japantown, you may not live there anymore, but there's always this tie back to Japantown and about pride in being Japanese American. You know, maybe it's our shared history about what happened during World War II. Maybe it's the fact that we have this pride that we have Japanese blood in us, you know, and the traditions and the invisible ways that draw us back to that ancestral country. But Kizuna is something that has been with us for a long time and will continue to be.
The bond that we have in our community is incredible. And I have to say that when I think of Kizuna, I also think of kokoro, because you know, the San Jose community is so, I mean, it's all about the heart, right? And it's just a warm environment and it's all about community. So that bond is so strong in San Jose that I'm just lucky to be a part of it and so proud of the community that we have. And I hope that after the pandemic is over, you know, people will come back in droves and support the community and also be part of it and enjoy what we have, because it's kind of unique. And I'm not telling you anything that you guys don't already know, but you know, we only have these 3 Japantowns. And so we've got to nurture them and make sure that we prepare ourselves for the future. And the only way we're going to do that is to engage the youth.
Kizuna to me is a feeling of connectedness, both with people you've already met and with others you haven't met yet. Kizuna goes beyond the physical and geographical distance, because it exists people's feelings, imagination, and memories. And you feel the connectedness even beyond the reach of physical distance. Kizuna means a lot during the time like this right now, during the pandemic, when people cannot physically meet. Someone cares about you, makes you feel as though that someone were right there in front of you, and that way you feel the sense of connectedness and sense of hope for the future.
Each person I've interviewed has had a different definition of Kizuna. In 2018, 20 years after I left Sendai, I had the opportunity to return again with a group of my friends. It was during the Tanabata Matsuri, and as I walked through the Shotengai, I was blown away by just how beautiful it was. Much more beautiful than I had remembered. But perhaps what surprised me most was to see just how far Sendai had come. This city had seen some of the most difficult times, and yet here it was, as vibrant and as strong as ever. You see, festivals like the Northern California Cherry Blossom Festival, they give us hope. They tell us that even through hard times like the Tohoku Earthquake and tsunami, or through our own pandemic times, we are stronger because we are together. This is what Kizuna means to me. I want to take this time to thank each and every person for sharing their stories with us today. Thank you.